So today I'm going to talk about the playoff field. And one thing I'm going to do about the Cup Series playoff field is basically talk about it, talk about each and every driver, grade the drivers and all that. So of course there are 16 drivers in the playoffs. 15 of those drivers have won races because of the win in your in system. It's a pretty controversial system in NASCAR, because 15 winners and Martin Truex Jr. fourth in the regular season standings missed the playoffs. So let's start. I'm gonna go in order by number because I don't remember exactly the order of everyone is in points. I know Elliott was the regular season champion. We're gonna go in order by number, lowest to highest. First of all, Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain won 2 races this year. He won at Coda when Alex Bowman took out AJ Allmendinger, and won at Talladega when Eric Jones and Kyle Larson moved out of his way. Now, one thing I like to bring up about Ross Chastain is, yeah, he did get those 2 wins. Pretty good for Chastain, showing signs of improvement. But then at Texas during the All-Star race, he had that pretty scary wreck. Went practically airborne a little bit after clipping Kyle Busch's car when he blew a tire, and his car hit hard. And after that wreck, he hasn't really been the same driver. It's just one of those traumatizing wrecks for drivers. And mentally, he didn't recover from it. Not saying he had a concussion. I know he hasn't been out. But the thing for Ross Chastain is, hasn't been the same driver. It's occasionally he's shown winning speed, but before the All-Star race, he's been in contention to win more than anyone else, more than usual than what we're used to seeing with Ganassi. Ganassi here is okay. He had good finishes with Ganassi. Trackhouse, he's a better driver, but after that, he's starting to show more of that Ganassi side of him. Starting to run mid-pack, lower positions, hasn't been much of contention to win, probably as a result of that race. Another thing I'd like to address with Ross Chastain is the controversy he's had all year, which, he's been really aggressive this year. He's been basically trying to take out anyone that tries to get in his way. It started way back in Gateway when he took out Denny Hamlin and spun out Chase Elliott as well. 2 drivers you do not want to mess with. So that's how it started. Then he started wrecking out lots of other drivers. You have guys like Kyle Busch or Truex or whatever, all wanting to have payback. Kyle Busch has said that these drivers need to pay Ross Chastain back and wreck him out. So he's starting to become a pretty controversial driver. Just wrecking out anyone that gets in his way. It's just become a worse version of Kyle Busch. I'm going to give him a B. I'm going to give him a B because he did okay. Had a great breakout season with Trackhouse this year, but he hasn't, had that winning speed that he's had after the All-Star race. I would have given him an A if not for that wreck, but he hasn't shown too much of that winning speed. Starting to look like his Ganassi self again, so give him a B. Next up, we have the rookie Austin Cindric, who recently won Rookie of the Year. He won the Daytona 500 to start the season, and he basically ran as good as you'd expect a rookie to run. Typically, the better rookies that is good. I didn't expect him to do too much. He did basically how I expected, apart from the win he made. Not have been in the playoffs, but he was still pretty good for a rookie, running in the top 20, top 15 most of the time. And he's exceptionally good on road courses. I'm surprised he hasn't won a road course race yet. But if you give him time, there's one more road course in the season, Charlotte Roval. So if you give him time, he's going to do good. I'm going to go ahead and give Austin Cindric an A- for this. The reason I'm going to give him an A- is because, he's done good for a rookie, but, rookies don't really do that good. That's probably the best I'm going to give any rookie, and he's the only rookie in the playoffs. He made it into the playoffs, and is the first rookie to do that since Custer in 2020. So, congrats to Cindric, my first A-ranked driver. Next up, I'm going to have Austin Dillon. Now, Austin Dillon won his way in the playoffs just last week at Daytona now, as we enter Darlington, the first race of the season, or the first race for playoffs. He is going to be a pretty good, he's not going to be a favorite. I don't expect him to make it really past the round of 16, and he is in the final seed in the playoffs. what I expect to see from Dillon is typically the usual Austin Dillon stuff. He may show out at Talladega because it's a super speedway, and he finished second there in the spring. But apart from that, he hasn't been as good as he was last year. Honestly, when it comes to the Richard Childress drivers, Tyler Reddick's obviously been the better one. We're going to talk about him later, as he's also in the playoffs. But Austin Dillon hasn't had that good of a season. When you compare him to Tyler Reddick, he's a nobody. He hasn't been running the top 20, not doing as good as you expect him. But he's hardly led laps. But then he won at Daytona. That's how he got into the playoffs. I sort of think that big wreck sort of helped him. That big wreck right before the rain delay sort of helped him get into the playoffs. But I'm going to give Austin Dillon, like, we'll say B-, C, probably B-. He is the last seed in the playoffs after all. Hasn't been the best driver. Hasn't really been at, this was definitely not his best season. But for that win, that's how he gets into the playoffs. So, he shocked the world. I'm going to give him like a B-. Next up, I'm going to do Kevin Harvick, the number 4 car. I did not expect Kevin Harvick to win this year. I thought that Bristol 2020 was his final win, and it wasn't. And it wasn't any real sure we were going to see him in the playoffs. And then he won at Michigan. Managed to get up front by the end of Michigan, and is the only driver to win back-to-back races. Now one of, I think, like 7 or 8, I think 7 drivers with multiple wins this year. Kevin Harvick followed up on that win at Richmond the next week. And to see Kevin Harvick not only break that winless streak, and not only break the winless streak, but also, like, actually win back-to-back races is impressive for Harvick. Going from 0 for 65 to 1 for 67 like that. So when it comes to Kevin Harvick, I don't like him personally, but I'm going to give this guy an A. A solid A for effort, because he's done really good. He's starting to show a really good like resurgence that we're starting to see from Kevin Harvick. So back to that speed he had, not necessarily in 2020, but he's sort of back to his old self. Next up, I'm going to talk about Kyle Larson. Now, we know for sure Kyle Larson hasn't been the same guy as he was last year. Last year, he showed off with 10 wins, won the freaking championship. But this year, hasn't been the same guy, but he won 2 races. He won the second race of the season in Fontana, followed that months later at Watkins Glen, when he pushed Chase Elliott over. It was a pretty controversial move from that he did at Watkins Glen, but to see Kyle Larson, you know, basically starting to turn like his Chip Ganassi self, that Chip Ganassi version of Kyle Larson, to see him perform. He's still winning races. He's in the playoffs. He's going to be in the playoffs anyway, because I think that's like the defending series champion gets into the playoffs. It's nice to see the guy, you know, win the, like, you know, start to be a pretty consistent driver. Now, Hendrick hasn't had that dominant of a season, but Larson's still been a pretty good driver. I'm gonna give him like a A-, because he's been good. Hasn't been up to speed. I didn't expect. No, like I expected more from him at the start of the season, but then he's starting to be like more like his Chip Ganassi self. So I'll just give him like an A-. So it's good for Larson. Next up, we have Tyler Reddick in a number 8 car. Now, of course, Tyler Reddick finally got that first win at Road America. I was thinking he wasn't going to win a race until Road America happened. Made that pass on Chase Elliott late in the race, and then managed to win at Road America. And then he won that. Then he followed that up at Indianapolis Road Course. I have a hard time saying Indy Road Course for some reason. But Tyler Reddick, been exceptional. I'm going to probably grade him. Now, that first half has been rocky, but he's managed to win 2 races. I know Chastain won 2 races. I'm going to give him a better grade. Now, I'm going to give Tyler Reddick a B+. Just a B+, because he's been a pretty consistent driver. He's been the better half of Richard Childress Racing, and to see him start winning races when he's only got 1 year left with Richard Childress since he's gone to 23-11, that's a very interesting thing to see from a guy like Tyler Reddick to finally break through, start winning in the Cup Series. Next up, we have Chase Elliott, the regular season champion and the 2020 champion. I watched the 2020 championship race. He had a good season. And he bounced that win back. He had 4 wins. He leads the field in 4 wins. Because, you see, he has 4 wins. He won at Dover. He won at Nashville. He won Atlanta, the summer Atlanta race. And then he officially did win at Pocono because they disqualified Hamlin and Busch. Now, with to see that happen, with Chase Elliott now able to make it just with a chance to win a second championship. Do I think he can win a championship? Yes, he's probably my favorite to win a championship. I'm going to give the guy an A+. It's not that I'm being biased because I'm an Elliott fan, but he really has been a really good driver this year. Next up, we're going to do Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin has not been himself this year either. He is 41 years old and is approaching the end of his career in just a few years from now. By the time we get to like the mid-to-late 20s, he'll probably be retired. But before we get to, that's a few years from now when he retires. Denny Hamlin has shown speed. He has managed to win officially 2 races. I mentioned earlier he was disqualified at Pocono, so his only wins was the Richmond Spring Race and the Coke 600. I don't like Hamlin personally, however, he has not had that good of a season apart from those 2 wins. He got disqualified at Pocono as well. That's another thing you gotta point out. So, if I were to say something about Hamlin, I'm going to give this guy probably the lowest grade so far, like a C+. Yeah, like a C+, basically, because he hasn't had that good of a season. Didn't have a good start to the season, and he hasn't been that good of a driver as he was. He's still showing signs of regression. We know that from last year he's showing signs of regression. So that's why we're doing the C+ for Denny Hamlin. Next up, we got Ryan Blaney. He has not actually won points races. He won the All-Star race, but that again is an exhibition race, so it doesn't count. Apart from the controversial finish to the All-Star race, of course, because it brought out the caution when he shouldn't have, Ryan Blaney hasn't won a race. Like, he has a chance to win a race, but he's the only Penske driver to not win a race this year. I'm going to give him probably a C for Ryan Blaney because he's the only driver to make it on points. I think he'll probably win a race sometime in the playoffs. So when it comes to Ryan Blaney, that's going to be a C, just because he just hasn't shown that winning speed. He's shown the speed, just hasn't been able to take the checkered flag in an actual points race this year. After Blaney, we have Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe, he surprised me to see him win the 4th race of the season at Phoenix. I think he's going to be an early exit for the playoffs, probably a round of 16 exit. But to see Briscoe not only win at Phoenix, but show some of that speed. He's had chance to win at Bristol Dirt and Charlotte, then he failed the slide job, so. But to see Chase Briscoe starting to show signs that he's improved from last year, so we know he's going to be a pretty good. He's starting to show signs he's going to be a pretty good driver in the future. Do I think he has a chance at the championship? No. But to show he's really improved in his sophomore season, I'm going to give the guy a solid, probably B. Just because he's improved, but I don't expect much from Briscoe. As for Kyle Busch, if you look at Kyle Busch, we talked about him in our first episode about the contract. The guy still doesn't have a ride. There's still no announcement. We don't know if he's going to be with Joe Gibbs Racing. But if you look at how he's been doing this year again, he hasn't been good this decade, since the start of the decade, really. He's won a few races, but this year he backed into a win at Bristol Dirt. That's all he's done this year. And again, he, got disqualified at Pocono for having that tape on the front of his car, which I discussed in my first ever Instagram video about NASCAR, that gave Chase Elliott the win. Now, Kyle Busch, I'm going to give like a solid, probably B minus actually, just because Busch doesn't have a ride. He only has 1 win this year he got backed into. If not for that side job, he would have been winless, maybe not even been in the playoffs. So, that's why I'm giving Kyle Busch a B minus. I don't even know where the guy's going next year. Christopher Bell is in the playoffs. He's probably been the worst Joe Gibbs Racing driver this year. But he's not even a Joe Gibbs Racing driver that missed the playoffs. It's Truex that misses the playoffs of all drivers. Because of the bad playoff system winning you're in thing. And he didn't win. But when it comes to Christopher Bell, he made it in on the playoffs. by managing to win at New Hampshire. I figured he would win in New Hampshire. He's a pretty good driver in New Hampshire. And his 3 Xfinity Series races there, 2018, 19, and 21, he won every Xfinity Series race he entered at New Hampshire and then won a Cup Series race. Came second there last year, got into the playoffs. I'm going to give the guy a solid B-. He hasn't been that good of a driver this year, so he's shown typical Christopher Bell speed. You saw what you expected from Christopher Bell. So for that's why I'm giving him a B-. Just hasn't been the best driver, but not the worst. Next up, I'm going to bring up Joey Logano. Again, not a guy I really like. Probably one of my least favorite drivers in NASCAR. But Joey Logano, apart from my opinion, Logano has been an okay driver. Winning the inaugural Clash race, that was an exhibition race, so it doesn't count. But he did win at Darlington, and he did win at Gateway. He always has a thing for winning inaugural races, winning the inaugural Bristol Dirt race, inaugural Coliseum race, and the inaugural Gateway race. Again, the Coliseum was the Busch class, so it doesn't count. But when you see Joey Logano, you know, he's, you know, been a typical, shown typical Joey Logano stuff. He's always done something that made him a controversial driver this year, and he always finds a way to win at least 1 or 2 races. Now, you know, for Logano, I'm going to give the guy like an A-. He was an okay driver. He was a pretty good driver this year. But, you know, he won 2 races. That's why I'm giving him putting him in the A tier, A-. But I'm not going to put him any higher than that. So, Logano gets a solid A- for having a pretty solid season. The season you'd expect from Joey Logano. Next up, William Byron. Byron has started to improve as a driver this year. For the first time ever, he's won 2 races. He won the spring race in Atlanta, and he won at Martinsville. Was the first repeat winner this year. And with those 2 wins, it's the first time he's done that. He's going to improve to be a better driver. Now, he probably won't have a shot at the championship, but probably expect 2023 or 2024 to see William Byron in the... If you see him in the championship for probably next year, I won't be surprised to see him in the championship for or something like that. So for William Byron, I'm going to give him, you know, I'm going to give him a B+, actually, because he's been a pretty, you know, solid driver. You know, like, he's improved from last year and the year before. But since that, he's just haven't been the same guy. Next guy. Oh, do I only have, like, 1, 2 other guys left? I think I do. I think, yeah. Alex Bowman, the second to last driver I'm going to talk about. Yeah, I've talked about that many drivers, haven't I? Yeah. Wait. We had 5 new winners this year, didn't we? I'm just trying to think about who we... Yeah, like... I'm going to go to Bowman and then do Suarez as him. So Alex Bowman hasn't been the guy he was as last year. Had a breakout season, winning 4 races. This year, he's only won the race at Vegas. Hasn't shown the speed he's shown last year. So for Bowman, hasn't been his best. Because he's regressed a lot from last year, I'm going to give him a lower grade. I'm going to give the guy a solid C. Just because he's regressed, you know. I don't expect him to go that far either. So that's why Bowman, he gets a C. Now we have Daniel Suarez. Now in Daniel Suarez's case, you know, he's shown pretty, like, breakout season. He impressed me. He won at Sonoma, and he ended up, you know, making the playoffs for the first time ever, being the first Mexican driver to make the Cup Series playoffs. Guy was an Xfinity Series champion. And to see him after 6 seasons finally break into victory lane, interesting breakout season. Now, you know, we've also seen, you know, typical trackhouse speed from Suarez. He made laps in a lot of races this year. Has probably had his career best year, especially having his first win. I'm going to give Daniel Suarez a solid, like... I'm going to give him, like, a really, like, comfortable B+. B+, actually, not B+, A-. A-. I've been really impressed with Suarez. I love seeing Suarez race. So, I'm going to see, who did I mention? I mentioned Chastain, Cindric, Dillon, Harvick, Larson, Reddick, Elliott, Hamlin, Blaney, Briscoe, Bush, Bell, Gano, Byron. Yeah, I think that's everyone. Yeah, that is everyone. So I've talked about everyone. I've talked about playoff rules. Let me know who your thoughts. Let me know who you want to win the championship. Who you think will win the championship this year. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.